Hello, hello. Welcome back to yet another edition of the Gaming Careers Podcast. Wouldn't it be cool if video games could hack into your life and your in-game achievements were actually real-life loot? Now, that could actually be a possibility. We have Siena Leslie from Habitica to tell us about their productivity and goal achievement game, which is fascinating and riveting. Siena, thank you so much for being with me on the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Steve.
It's a pleasure. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. But before we get off and running, can you let our listeners know who you are in the gaming space and how do you contribute? Who are you?
So I am the person who does a lot of the design-related decisions for the company. Because it's a small company, right? We're a, kind of 3 full-time and then a handful of contractors and then a giant batch of awesome open source volunteers who I'll, highlight later. I have to wear a lot of hats. So I do also all the social media and marketing. I do a lot of organization for the open source community to make sure that everything is still running smoothly. And I also will just kind of pick up where things need to fill spaces that need to be filled, running the community, that sort of thing.
And I also heard a rumor that you do a lot of the pixel art.
I do, in fact. Yes, I do a lot of the pixel art, and that is how I started with Habit RPG.
All right, so that goes to the root of the question. So how did that happen?
Habitica began as a Kickstarter for Habit RPG, a RPG for your habits. We changed the name recently to Habitica so that we would stop getting questions about what the 3 letters were standing for and why we were Habit XYZ and, Habit VMO and just a lot of frustration and confusion. People had a tough time remembering the name, which was a surprise to all of us as, game geeks who, that those 3 letters came as easily as breathing to us. Oh, your Habit rocket-propelled grenade? No. What?
That's awesome. Oh, what I like about that is that your rebranding is actually poising you to take advantage of a larger market, because the acronym of gamers is what was confusing, probably because people from a broader audience were starting to take advantage of your software.
We hope so. We hope that we will be, because we already have about 40% of the people who use what we consider to be a very gamer-heavy product do not identify themselves as gamers. And that's an enormous number from our perspective. And we want to make this applicable to everyone because we believe it is applicable to everyone. We think just as games can be enjoyed by everybody, everyone also needs to get their life in order. There's always something, whether it's your dentist keeps getting on your case because you aren't flossing, whether you're having trouble getting your timesheets in on time to your employer, whether you're having, everything in your life is just going swimmingly except you can't see the kitchen counter because there are so many dishes piled up on them, from going months back.
Right.
You need some inspiration.
Right. So, and this is all something that Habitica helps people track the behavior on, and you basically get like in-game loot. But I'm sorry that I sidetracked you. So how did you said Habitica, there was a Kickstarter, and you got involved. How did that happen?
Well, I saw it and saw this initial Kickstarter from the guy who'd created it, had the first idea, Tyler. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I used to do pen and paper wise to motivate myself to get through finals in college."
Okay, right? Tell me more about that because that's cool.
So my background is less in video games, more in tabletop, specifically tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and things of that ilk. Absolutely, right? I was in D&D club in high school every year.
Super cool. Yeah, you're part of my peoples. This is awesome.
So what I would do to get myself through finals is I would, draw a little version of myself looking sad, no armor, nothing special. And then every time I make a big to-do list, every time I crossed off a big thing on my to-do list, I would draw my avatar posing with a new piece of armor. I would, let her collect things, just basically to motivate myself. Just made a whole pen and paper RPG that was all about leveling myself up when I completed my real life obligations. And it certainly meant that finals was a lot more enjoyable. So when I saw this, I got really excited. I wanted to join in. And the first place that I saw a niche was in the pixel art. The very first pixel art we had was from a game called Browser Quest. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I hope.
Awesome people, and they had their art publicly available. And so we said, can we use some of your sprites for our game? And they said, yes, you can. And so that's where the warrior gear comes from, the initial warrior gear in the game. But we wanted to go very far beyond that, so I ended up designing all of the gear for the other classes, because you can, in fact, on your quest to improve your life, choose a class, and so that you can cast spells and have a nice balanced party with your friends as you're all motivating each other to get
that's
things done.
awesome. In some of the playing that I've done with it, and we talked a little bit before that I use this for producing the podcast and collaborating with my editor. We both got very, very excited, but we're both rogues, so we're not healing anybody. We just do lots of damage. So, but it's a lot of fun.
Good. Well, yeah, that's great. You have to keep yourselves on your toes and make sure you're not letting any of your dailies slip.
That's exactly right. And I went on a browser vacation for 3 days over the weekend, and we were on a Bassi list quest, and I didn't do any of my dailies and got my butt handed to me. And my editor was very pissed at me, but it was like, dude. But I guess that speaks to one of the cool things about the game is that there is this kind of playful collaboration accountability that I was like, oh yeah, my bad. Maybe I need to go like rest in the tavern or the inn or something if I'm going to do that, because I just pwned both of us. Absolutely.
The feature that Steve is talking about is our questing feature. The way that Habit RPG is Habitica is the way that Habitica is set up is that you have habits, which are things you do multiple times a day, or things you're supposed to avoid doing. A good habit would be like eating vegetables. A bad habit would be smoking a cigarette, something like that. And then you've got dailies, which are the things you're supposed to do once a day, right? You know, that's going to be something like clear out your inbox, or you know, straighten up the kitchen for 15 minutes.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got your to-do list. That's the long-term stuff you have to do. Finish your, finish the latest project that you're working on. Complete a build for your latest project.
Right. Now, and so you said that you were involved in making this pixel art. Did you have any background besides sketching that gave you experience in pixel art, or was it just, I will figure out how to do pixel art?
Well, no, I did a bunch of pixel art for fun. Now I look back at my pre-Habit pixel art, and it's just comically bad, extremely cringeworthy. I improved more in like the first probably 6 months of doing pixel art for Habit than I did in the 4 years previous of doing pixel art here and there. My very first experience with pixel art was cross-stitching. I do a lot of cross, and I like doing cross-stitching. And so then when I got a tablet, I decided to play around with the cross-stitching, but on a computer, and especially since I had a love of all these super nerdy.
That's wonderful.
Nerdy pursuits.
I know that a lot of our listeners are indie devs, or they might be, kind of neck deep in some of the code and may not have access to being able to interact with a lot of graphics. So pixel art might be an option for them. Are there any resources that you relied on to help build your pixel art chops as you were going, or was it just a lot of practice?
A lot of the people in the community were very helpful, and I'm proud to say that Habitica actually has maintained that to this day. If you want to practice pixel art, we try to make it very, very easy to get involved and actually submit pixel art to the game if you want to try to get pixel art in the game. We have an entire guild on the site devoted to helping pixel artists just in general. We have another guild which is for pixel art, like workshopping pixel artists who are in we're workshopping pixel artists for the pieces that they are going to be submitting.
Yes, so this will all be included in the video portion. I have cats, and the cats destroyed my backdrop and all of that. And it was absolutely fabulous.
It's a thing of beauty. It's like a slow and...
And I was trying to keep my stuff together, and I'm going to be very professional. I'm wearing my nice shirt. I have my lights up here on my backdrop. It's all that. One cat destroyed that. So it's very, very exciting. All of this will be edited out of the podcast version, but for those of us watching on the video, this will be something that you will get to see now, and this will be part of the inaugural episode of the Gaming Careers Podcast. Okay, so Siena, can you tell me, we've talked a little bit about the game indirectly by way of how you got involved, but what is Habitica and how does it work and why is it cool and why is it different from other kind of motivation software that's out there?
So you hear the term gamification a lot, and if you're like me, you probably cringe a little bit when you hear that word. Because as someone who cares about games, it's like, well, okay, gamification, it sounds cool. It sounds like you're going to make more things into games, right? You know, we support this. Gets a big thumbs up. And then you look at what it is, and it's like, this is an extremely boring thing, but we gave you a badge. So give it an idea. Like, what?
So true.
Okay, what's going on here? This is boring. Have you ever played a game in your life? So our goal was to do something that really could actually straddle the boundaries between productivity app and actual fun old school retro game. So as a result, we don't just give you a badge, although that is something you can do. You can earn badges, certainly. But we also have quests that we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? We have quests where if you don't do the things you said you were going to do every day, the monster will attack all your friends. We have, and of course, you defeat the monster by doing the things that you do set out to do, right? Whether that's washing the dishes diligently or mastering a new programming language.
Right.
We have also classes that you can choose depending on your play style, and that also doesn't just give you, fun game benefits like spells that you can cast. It also affects your play style, so it's your motivational strategy can become your class. If you find that you're most interested in all of the collectible aspects, and that's what motivates you most, you probably want to be a rogue, right? Because they can find a lot more items than the other classes.
Right.
If you set yourself super ambitious daily goals, your daily goals that you don't complete will damage you every night. But if you're a healer, there are spells you can cast that mitigate that damage. So a super challenging heavy load that would just annihilate most of the other classes, a healer can bear the brunt of the damage. And so that's good for people who find that really motivating, but are not motivated by the death mechanic and having their avatar, lose health. You probably want to be a healer, so that's not a risk for you. Things like that, right? Mages, if you're really interested in streaks, there's a spell you can cast that can keep the streaks alive, and it works because it is it's all based on how much magic and how much mana you're able to earn, which is of course like everything else in the game. You earn it when you're doing well, you lose it when you're doing poorly.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that just jumps out to me about Habitica. It is actually a game. You play it by doing stuff in real life, but it is a game. And to your point, getting a badge or getting more points or being on a leaderboard, I mean, okay, but there's just so many different types of games out there that even I've looked at some gamification software and I find most of it fairly offensive to a gamer because it's stuff that you don't want to do, and this like somebody that's not a gamer put it together, and you're playing and you're like, this is not fun. So to contrast that with my experience with Habitica, shameless plug here for you guys, is that the stuff that I was most passionate about on like World of Warcraft or Diablo was usually messing with my inventory and tweaking my gear and all of that stuff, mostly cosmetic. Just because that's how I roll. And I can do the same thing in Habitica. So I have tons of gear and I get tons of pets, and with the more chance to play with a very cute pixel art, by the way. Moving stuff around, and my gear that is best for my class doesn't have to be my cosmetic choices. And so I am playing the game. I do actually have a bad habit on Habitica, which is tweaking with my inventory too long, and I haven't decided what too long is, but I can feel it. You've crossed the line. So then I'm like, oh crap, I actually have to go back to work because I'm playing my motivation game. So that's all to say that you are doing an excellent job of capturing a gamer experience that can affect real life behaviors. So it's pretty cool.
It's fun because we've all been in that situation where you're like, oh, I should, probably go clean my room. Oh, but I'm so close to that final level. I'm just, 20 XP away from leveling up. I just gotta. And now it's like, oh man, I'm 20 XP from leveling up. I gotta go clean my room.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and that's awesome. And what I really like is that your party will encourage you to do so as well, for completing a quest or doing extra damage to the monster, and that's pretty cool. And I like that those goals are individually set. So somebody might be working on editing some more pages from their book. I might want to go work out. Obviously, since this is a video forum, they can tell that is not my jam. But it's just whatever you're into or whatever you're trying to accomplish, you can encourage each other in that.
Yeah, we believe that having a social component is absolutely crucial. Getting to play games with your friends is part of what makes them so sticky and fun. And having people cheering you on for accomplishing your goals is a big motivating factor, right? So those two, it was just a very natural pairing, right? You want people to be able to hold you accountable. There are full guilds for people holding each other accountable. There's the short-term goal accountability guild, which is just a bunch of people being like coming in and being like, by the time I'm done, I'm gonna have edited 2 chapters of my novel today. And then everyone's like, go for it, yeah, we're cheering for you. Hey, did you do it? Have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? Come on. Right?
That's so cool.
There's just this whole there's this kind of outpouring of positivity in our community, which we really value and which I'm extremely proud of. I'm really happy to point at our community and say, look, this is a really positive place full of people who work really hard to support each other.
Right. Well, let's actually talk about that a bit. So Habitica is open source, huge community. It seems like you've kind of struck on the secret sauce of interaction. So how did that take place? Was that intentional? Did that start off from the beginning? How did you get people involved like that?
From the very beginning, open source was an absolute conviction. That's something that we've never wavered on. We really want to make sure that we can have as much open source and as much community participation as we possibly can. It's just a very cool world, and it's been, a lot of people were worried about it. When we were first pitching it to people, we would get our lawyers and stuff who'd be like, oh, no, you can't possibly have a company built on open source. That's absolutely a disaster. There's no way. But no, we think we can do it. We think we can have a viable company that's consumer facing and still open source and have benefits and have that amazing creativity be just part of our company's soul, and that has been absolutely the way things have turned out. One of the first things we did, which turned out to be a good idea, was we said, well, we added game mechanics to everything. Like, what if we also add game mechanics to contributing to the project, right? What if we give people special armor and pets if they contribute stuff to us? That was popular, unsurprisingly. And a lot of it has been kind of self-perpetuating. People go into the tavern and they look around and they see all the people contributing, right? They read the announcements and they see that, you know, this feature was added by this cool person. And they're like, oh, I was just talking to that person, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just kind of, or like, oh, wow, you know, I came back after my vacation and the color of your name in chat has changed. And what happens? Like, oh, the art that I made was accepted. We're all going to have, you know, griffin pets. Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's been a very warm, very encouraging community, and it's just been incredible to see how much people have been working. And so then when it came time for the company to kind of grow a little bit, because we're still quite small, you know, there was no sitting around being like, but, you know, I guess we have to do a round of like 70 job interviews. It's like, no, absolutely not. We know exactly who we want for this job because it's the person who's already been submitting really consistent, amazing things. So we have, you know, like the person who's the contractor right now who's been working on the mobile app, we knew because he created a mobile app.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's really cool because it's kind of like you develop that community and they're always working with you, whether or not they're on the staff or not. And I sidetracked you from way back when we were just talking about how you got involved. You got involved, but with the pixel art, and then became part of that core nucleus of people working on it. But we hear this story over and over that people are contributing in a super fanboy or fangirl type way and then find their connection, right? It may not be with that company, but it might be through a connection in the tavern or in a forum or in some place where you make that connection. You're like, hey, you know, you do a lot of really good work. Would you be interested in doing something with me? And that's kind of what sparks those connections that allow you to break into the gaming industry.
Absolutely. I think that's 100% true. I've seen it over, not just in Habitica and in our community and in my own experience, but also in the indie game community at large. You know, my friends, I have a lot of friends who are indie game developers. And it's, you know, you just see over and over the people who are making connections and the people who are doing really cool stuff. They're the ones that the doors start opening for. Whereas the people who just kind of say, oh yes, I'd like to go for this maybe at some point, but then you don't see the stuff that you don't see them actually producing things and showing things and creating things and talking to people and showing them to people. And then you don't really see them start to do as much. Obviously, there are many, many factors, but I would say that all things being equal, if you are constantly doing work and constantly producing things, that's something that can be, I mean, it just pops out.
It just seems to be that thing that people that are doing things are allowed to do things. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
One of my friends once was talking about this, and he said, one of the most valuable things that you can do is make yourself valuable.
Nice.
Like, look around and say, like for me, like I was certainly not angling to end up becoming a co-founder of the company. I just thought it was like a fun little side project, but I ended up getting so passionate about it, and I was producing so much art, and then I was like, well, the way that this open source community is being organized is not super efficient. Maybe I can do some reorganization, and nobody's promoting this at all. Well, I can, you know, I'm a pretty solid writer. I can step up and start promoting this via social media and start running the Twitter and making sure people have their concerns answered to. And then I sort of looked around, and I was holding all these threads. And then I was asked, like, hey, do you want to come on board in this crazy project? And I was like, yeah, I do, actually.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So for the armies of listeners to this podcast that are now all jazzed about being able to contribute somewhere, now finding out that Habitica is an open forum that they can contribute, where might they be able to apply their talents?
We have a very wide range, obviously. We're a website and mobile app. We always are excited when we see pull requests. You can look through our GitHub to see what our kind of biggest needs are. As for features, we've got a bunch of collections on Trello. Just ask someone before you jump in. Our guild, Aspiring Legends, the Aspiring Legends Guild is a great place to jump in if you just kind of want to be following all-purpose things. We have an Aspiring Coders Guild, the Aspiring Artisans Guild for pixel artists. We've got a whole variety of systems. If you go, I think the easiest thing to do would be probably to start asking in those guilds for direction, and people will point you to the right avenues. Also, looking at our excellent wiki, which is in fact entirely maintained by incredible volunteers. I'm always amazed. I look things up on the wiki. I'm like working on the latest, batch of like seasonal armor sets for our world events, because we have world events. Because what kind of game wouldn't have world events? Those are some of the best parts,
of
at
course,
least from my perspective. So I'm the person who organizes and designs all of those. I'll be like, oh man, God, what was the Constitution boost for the seasonal healer armor sets? I want to make sure this one matched. I just pulled the wiki. They've got everything.
Very,
and they
very
also
nice.
have advice. They also have advice on how to contribute, and it's very good.
That's
so that's
wonderful.
A great place to start.
That's wonderful, and that's great that you're giving some kind of concrete places to start. When looking at video game designer resumes, I do this a lot, and so what I find is the first thing that I'm looking for is where's the portfolio link? What have you done? Show me something that you have actually accomplished.
Absolutely.
And so what it's sounding like is here is just a very practical, very action item list. You can join Habitica, put one of the tasks on your to-do list to be able to contribute, and then you'll be able to use that as your portfolio, as part of your portfolio of actual features that are in an actual game with an actual community, and you're building your resume, your credibility, your community while you're giving back.
Absolutely, 100%. We strongly encourage the people that are contributing to our projects. We're like, well, we think your stuff is fantastic. That's why that's why we merged your pull request. That's why we accepted the pixel art. That's why, we've been cheering on and stuff. Show that to other people. I tell people, hey, look at this. This is the set of pixel art that I created for Habitica, which is a website that has 300,000 monthly active users. Check it out.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
And they all use my art, and they see my art, and I help contribute code to them, and I, also to community, right? We have a lot of people who have risen from the community and become moderators. And if you're interested in a maybe community management position, I'm not sure how many people are interested in that in the listening to this podcast, but that's an important niche, especially I think it's maybe a little overlooked, but I think community management is a very important role, especially in social games, and increasingly games are going to have large social components. They already do. The Gaming Careers podcast is really designed to outline a lot of those different careers, not just the game dev, not just the artist or the animator or things of that nature. So you have done just a ton of community management work. Can you let us know what that job is like? Stressful, but it can be very rewarding. I'd say that in a way, I'm lucky because my community is much less hostile and vituperative than a lot of other communities have a reputation for being, especially in the game space, right? We sort of have a bad reputation. People are always looking at us and being like, oh, you know, ugh, gamers, oh, they're all evil.
Right, right. So as far as the community management, so you're listening to a lot of the complaints and a lot of the suggestions and things of that nature and trying to kind of funnel that and make sure everybody's happy and moving forward?
You do, but we've managed to create a community and build a community which is really very, very positive. I mean, there are always going to be trolls, but the way you handle the trolls and the way you accept what the trolls are doing is pretty important. One of the most important steps we took was creating a comprehensive set of community guidelines, not just the terms of service, right? Terms of service have all the basic important things. But the community guidelines go beyond that to give suggestions. And I did a lot of research when I was putting together the community guidelines, and we worked really, really hard on them. It wasn't just, you know, whims that came to my mind. It was working closely with the moderators, working closely with other people in the community, to try to figure out what is the stuff that our community is already doing that we really support. Mm-hmm. And what is the stuff that we want to make sure our community doesn't do? What is the stuff that is not acceptable? And one of the things we decided on, for example, was we really wanted to have a no insults policy. And that was super ambitious, right?
Yes, it's a very high bar.
That is a high bar to fill, but we looked at what we were producing. We thought what we are most proud of is seeing our communities support each other. Like, everyone is here to improve our lives, right? That is really tough. That's like changing your habits is incredibly difficult, and getting support for changing your habits, that can just be the key that clicks you into being like, this is a huge slog, but I can do it. I can make it to the top of this mountain. And getting insults at, you know, when you're already trying to tackle something very difficult, you know, or when maybe you're a new pixel artist and you want to try submitting this art and someone says, wow, that is so ugly. No, you didn't need to say that.
Right, right.
What you could have said is, so I noticed that you used 7 different sizes of pixels when you're creating this art. Like, that's probably not good. And here's some references, and this is what jaggies are, and like, you know, here are some fixes, and here are how you can improve things, right? Because we're all about improvement.
Very nice, very nice. And so to clarify this for our listeners, the community that Habitica has cultivated, really, you don't permit any sort of name calling, no insults, no derogatory comments of any nature whatsoever, right?
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes people will complain that we're too strict. But we sort of feel like there are so many places where you can insult people and you can be insulted.
That's true.
The place that you're going to try to improve your life and conquer your worst habits and, you know, form a community doesn't need to be one of those places.
Right. And one of the things that I want to hit on here from a business standpoint is that choice is a differentiator. It is something that you have chosen to do that has placed you in a unique place in the marketplace. So that means that this game is something that is safe for work. It is safe for children. It is safe for people to, you know, your mom can come over and read over your shoulder while you're going through the forums and whatnot. And that makes it a certain type of product that I really think will have a very broad appeal. And I bring that up because as you're designing your own games, think about where you want to fit, right? And so if there's a stereotype, if you're a gamer and you have that big label on your forehead, what are some of the negative connotations about that, and how can you do something differently to mitigate those negative impressions that people might have? Right.
Like a good way to think about this, for example, our CEO loves Kingdom of Loathing.
Okay.
I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's a stick figure RPG, and they have an extremely irreverent sense of humor.
All right.
So for them, having restrictions on what language the users can post would have limited their appeal greatly because they're targeting a very specific market. And the language they use in their community guidelines is not language that we would ever use in our community guidelines. And that's fine. That's great. Because it's really funny, right? Or if you look at, like the customer support emails of Cards Against Humanity, they just insult people because that's part of their whole shtick.
Right.
But for us, we want this to be something that teachers can use with students. We want this to be something that teams can use in the workplace. We want this to be something parents can use with children. We want this to be something that friends can use to motivate each other just in their everyday life. We want to appeal to every background.
Right.
So as a result, in the public forums, I want to stress that you can say whatever you want to your friends as long as they're okay with it and you're okay with it. I don't get a bunch of angry emails on Monday mornings.
Right, exactly.
But in the public spaces, we do ask that users be very respectful of each other. And that has made a big difference. We've gotten a lot of people saying, I never participated in any online community before this one because I never felt safe enough. I was really not sure about this game, but then when I saw how friendly everyone was, people who are not conventional gamers are playing this game because they feel like it's okay. They're not going to get attacked for it. They're not going to get insulted for it. And that's really heartening to hear as a community manager. Those are the sorts of emails that make my day, right?
Absolutely.
To hear just an outpouring of people like, to have people specifically call out the community as one of the best parts of Habitica is really gratifying. And that's because we are so socially focused. We've got so many chat platforms. We have both the main tavern chat where anyone can talk. We have guilds, which are common interest groups you can join. Like if you're a grad student, you might want to join the Grad Students Guild or the Scholars. If you really love World of Warcraft, right, you might want to join the WoW Guilds. They have like a lot of different things, both based around productivity and based around enjoyment. They've got challenges which you can issue, stuff like 52 weeks to a clean home, or small guilds like save water every day. There are small challenges like save water every day.
That's really cool. And so there was something else that I kind of wanted to develop a little bit, and that is how you've formed the community and the open source nature of it and how you protect your users. You mentioned that issue of safety. One of the things that I find very refreshing about Habitica is how inclusive it is. And, it's a fantasy role-playing game, but doesn't degenerate into the bikini-clad armor and those fairly overly trod gender tropes that can be exclusive. I just find it very, very accessible. The art style doesn't pull me in a particular direction that I might feel uncomfortable, and I just find that is reinforced by the community itself.
Well, it's because it's something that we think is extremely important. Right? We have people from all walks of life, and we want to make sure that they're supported and that everyone feels safe. And that's hard to do, right? There will always be times when there are people who will get upset about a certain aspect of the community or a certain, interaction or something, and you get a lot of feedback. But I would encourage people to try really hard to listen to the feedback fully before dismissing it. Because sometimes you'll get some suggestion, and it's like this is a problem for accessibility. And the first thought might be like, oh my god, that's a hassle. But how much of a hassle is it for the person who relies upon this sort of feature?
Right.
Things like resting in the inn, like we made a change to it recently. Originally, when you rest in the inn, that just paused your account. everything just froze, right? Because it was like, oh, you're on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got feedback from people who have chronic illness who said, actually, this is very inconvenient because when I'm resting in the inn, having my account pause completely means that I can't keep track of whether I took my medicine in the morning, right? It means I can't keep track of whether or not I did these things. It means I can't be motivated to keep doing these things. But maybe I just can't do everything, and I don't deserve to be damaged by it at the end of the day by the stuff I didn't do because I'm having a really bad flare-up. And we listened to that, and we were like, wow, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good point, and it, we discussed things and debated, and it, took a while because things are super fast when you're a community of mostly volunteers.
Right, right.
But they do get done, which is important. And so we did change it. So now what happens is you just don't take damage, but they refresh every day. So
that's really cool. I actually hadn't. I was taking it in a different direction, but that's, I think, more interesting. I was thinking about it from a sexism standpoint, but I've had a lot of conversations about video game accessibility to people that have needs to be able to access a game in a particular way. And that's an excellent point. We've had people on the podcast before talking about video game accessibility. So how you tweaked the feature of the tavern opened up accessibility to an entirely different category of user that felt excluded otherwise.
It's true. And there's definitely still stuff that we can do and haven't done yet to improve accessibility. But what we really, if there are people who are having trouble using our site and having trouble using our app because of accessibility issues, please tell us. Tell us, let us know.
Tell the community manager.
Right? We had an issue recently where one feature broke something which we didn't broke a keyboard shortcuts that were necessary for people who couldn't use mouses, and we didn't realize that we hadn't even thought about that. But then someone logged an issue, and we're like, well, this is a big issue. What do we do? How do we fix it? Let's go back and forth on this. So it's something to consider. From a sexism perspective, yes, that was something that I think comes of having a lot of women involved in the community.
Sure.
Myself included. We wanted to make sure that we didn't actually fall into gender stereotypes at all. In fact, we wanted to make sure that gender wasn't a consideration. All types of armor are open to everybody, and then we tried to make a lot of avatar customization available. You can choose if your body type is slim or broad. You can choose if you want to have a flower in your hair. You can choose the length of your hair, your type of hairstyle. It's all, little pixel art, so it's easier to be kind of gender neutral on that subject because of the pixel, because of the art style that we have.
Sure.
But it is something that we work really hard to do. It's something that we want to make sure that everything is available to everyone. And we try to stick to that as much as we can.
Very nice. Very nice.
Unless, of course, you missed out on the special summer outfits. In that case, you're going to have to wait till next summer. Sorry, guys.
All right. We'll have to deal with that. Currently, I got my complete rodeo set. So I've got my hat and lasso, and I'm all decked out as a 31st level rogue. Yeah,
excellent.
Because that's how I roll. I want to talk about the kind of what's happening in the future with Habitica. One of the things that I'm really interested about is how you take advantage of plugins and how people integrate with it. So Habitica actually can reach out from its platform and affect me in other places that I'm trying to be productive. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's something that we're always thrilled when someone shows up and says, hey, I created a third-party integration for Trello, for Beeminder, for all these different platforms we've never heard of, but you created one. Awesome, excellent, great. Have the contributor reward. We're very interested in pursuing integrations as we continue as well. So that's something that we value pretty strongly. We'd like to eventually start getting integrations, especially with other productivity tools and calendars.
Oh, nice.
That would be something we really want to do, something we want to focus on. But yeah, we've had some really good relationships have come up out of having just a very kind of very open relationship with all of these other products. For example, the Habitica Beeminder integration works very well, and it's cool. I encourage people to check that out too. Beeminder is another productivity app. Except this one is if you aren't achieving your goals, you have to pay real money.
Ouch.
And so we have an integration where if you are not doing your to-dos, it can dock you.
Wow.
Through Beeminder, if you're not doing your to-do list on Habitica.
Okay, yeah, I'm not signing up for that one right away, but what I can let our listeners know about is I use two. One is a Pomodoro plugin, and a Pomodoro is basically just it's a timer that works on a particular schedule where you're productive for this amount and you're down for this amount. You're productive, you trade off, and it's a way of keeping your brain fresh while you're doing very focused level work, and it actually increases your productivity. And that talks to Habitica, and I get little experience points every time I complete one of the cycles. And then there's another one that watches my browsing habits. So when I'm on Facebook and Twitter, I get hurt. And when I'm on the appropriate websites that I'm supposed to be surfing for my job, I get rewarded to do so. So that's just an example of how Habitica is integrated to my behavior, and I get to get mad game props for not being on Facebook all day.
That's good. That's great. As it should be, right?
As it should be, and yet often is not.
And often it's not. I know, it's tragic to look out at all these lives not getting experience for.
That's right. That's right.
And so forth, yeah. I keep bringing up washing dishes because the state of my kitchen right now is somewhat disastrous.
I've been skirting that as well. I have a large tower, and it lives nowhere on Habitica for me to be held accountable. So maybe that's something I need to jump on a guild and get encouraged, nicely encouraged to do so.
I gotta say, everything's gonna be squeaky clean over here once the workday is over, because there are some dailies that need to get done.
Very, very nice.
The undersea city of Dilatory needs rescuing, and by golly, I'm the warrior to do it.
Awesome. Siena, thank you so much for sharing your time and experience. I really liked the format of this discussion. I thought it was very broad, and we were able to pull in a lot of applicable information while still completely nerding out on an RPG that helps us stay productive. Can you let our listeners know any big announcements that you might have and where we can find out more about Habitica?
The best place to find out more about Habitica is by looking at the website. We have the most features on the website, so that's something we encourage people to do. It's habitica.com. The most exciting announcements are we have just released our new and improved iOS app, the Habitica app, and we are working on the Android one. We're hoping it'll be out soon. That will also be called Habitica.
Very nice.
We do have some. These are replacing the older apps that were using PhoneGap. They were not native apps, and they were rather clunky, and they're outdated. So these new ones are a huge improvement, and we definitely encourage people to check out the iOS one now and check out the Android one when it is ready. Another place is you can go to our blog too. You can, if you just search Habitica blog, it should come up, and that will have additional information.
That's wonderful. And I will make sure that all of that is in the show notes. I do encourage our listeners to check out the iOS app. It's one of those things that I can be out and click on the I'm out someplace social that is not just with my wife and get my bonus, which is one of my habits, because I like being introverted. So it's an excellent thing to take with me and have in my pocket. Siena, thank you so much again for your time. And this has just been a great conversation. I look forward to doing it again soon.
All right. Okay. Everyone, come say hi to me in the tavern. My handle there is Lemoness. I'm the lemonade sorceress. So come say
Do
hello.
it. Do it.
Say Steve sent you. Right.
Right, and I might get a bonus or I might get a title or something. We'll have to talk about that offline. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
Awesome.